Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests for today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this week's edition of Inspired Action. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and I'm here today with three amazing guests to answer this question. What do you do when the loudest and most confident voice in the room is also the one that's holding back the team? But first, let me do a quick introduction to these guests. First of all, Karen Benoy Preston, professional certified coach and founding president of EMCC USA, championing excellence, ethics, and systemic thinking in coaching, mentoring, supervision, and team development. And Karen, we got to learn more about that in the USA. I got my global team coaching cert from them years ago. Fantastic organization. Linda Salazar, founder and master corporate trainer at Bright Trainer, where she helps organizations supercharge their engagement and productivity by showing them how to create effective employee training and deliver it with confidence. So important. Last but not least, Jeremy York, keynote speaker, author, and consultant. Jeremy is the lead consultant and president of InvigorateHR and co-author of the JoyPowered Organization. His expertise in defining and understanding the big picture enables him to translate business needs into tangible solutions. And man, I am thrilled to have the combination of expertise that you guys are bringing and diving into this question. And Linda, I think it was self-proclaimed, but you kind of drew the short end of the stick to go first. So here is your question one more time. What do you do when the loudest and most confident voice in the room is maybe the one that's also holding the team back?
Oh, it happens, right? First is to assume good intent. Assume
Hmm.
that this person is well-meaning. And so when you assume that, then you can just redirect. So I might go up to that person and give them a different task, or maybe they just feel like they need to be heard. So I would kind of see what's going on, depends on, of course, the situation, but I might say, hey, great idea. Can you go write me up some pros and cons on that idea? I'd like to explore it further. So that person then feels validated that, oh, well, the boss wants to hear my idea. Let me, go develop it a little bit. And then I can work with the rest of the group. Like, okay, well, what other ideas do we have? Or I might just put that person in charge and say, hey, great idea. Can you help me get two more ideas from the rest of the team and bring it back?
Mm.
So kind of deputizing that person, giving them more responsibility. A lot of times that can make them, feel useful, like they're contributing, and maybe they just didn't know other than, saying their point of view over and over, they weren't feeling heard. So this might be a way to make them feel heard, make them feel valued, because you always want all your team members to have that feeling about you. As opposed to, oh, well, you need to shut up, you need to sit down, you need to be quiet, let other people talk. When you're admonishing that person, you really are stifling that person's creativity going forward. And you're also showing the rest of the team that if they speak up too loudly, that's how they're going to be treated. And that's when you're not going to get any more ideas out of that team. They're going to shut down on you. So yeah, I would say deputize, redirect that person, and next time maybe their idea is the right one. Who knows?
I like it because I think what I hear is that energy is contagious, right? If in your response, if arrogance is taken in admonishing that individual, that's probably going to be the energy that spreads. And I think your other point there around sometimes the loudest voice needs a listening assignment. Go find the other solutions from other people is powerful as well. Let's jump over to Karen. Karen, what would you add to this question as it relates to when the loudest voice or loudest or most confident voice may also be the one that's holding you back?
Yeah. So I think I love Linda's approach in this, and that's certainly assuming good intentions, I think is great. Being able to kind of help redirect and bring the voices into the room. I think from my coaching, team coaching background, my question might be something like, to the team itself, asking what is emerging in the energy collectively, and where might there be an opportunity to shift. So instead of me calling this out, having the actual team itself emerge what is happening in this, and having the team then identify where those opportunities might lie in terms of maybe some tweaks and perhaps some pivots. If there isn't anything that bubbles up from that, then I would maybe kind of take a little bit more of a proactive approach and ask, how do we value all of the voices in the room, and how well might we be honoring all of those voices, and just, again, stay in that really high level coach approach and ask to hopefully someone will be able to say and surface some opportunities to balance the voices in the room a little better. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I think, your opening statement speaks to leadership isn't really about winning the room. It's about lifting it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you can bring that collective, assuming the psychological safety is there for that communication to exist. Right.
For
But
sure.
absolutely. It's about how do we take that and lift it and maybe coach through it collectively to move to solution. I love it. Jeremy, let's jump over to you. What would you add to these two ladies' perspectives as it relates to the loudest and most confident voice, maybe actually being the one that holds the team back?
Yeah. And, I think I'm very much in alignment with what Linda and Karen had kind of said, especially that aspect of let's kind of assume good intent. What I like to coach leaders on and kind of share with them is like, start with curiosity and not confrontation. Let's really understand the why behind this individual that might have the loudest voice, or me, the first one to answer. Because I think a lot of times what I'm seeing is that the person thinks they're helping other people by jumping in and getting it going, or like, hey, just want to kind of ideate with people and get it all out in the open, when a lot of times they're stepping on other people's opportunity to actually share their perspective. So I think thinking about it and trying to understand from that curiosity standpoint is really, really important. I also think it's important to maybe put in some structured, structured decision-making processes. And what I mean by that is, if we're dealing with a team and we're trying to get everyone to participate, and we've got one person who might be domineering or dominate that conversation, about being able to say, oh, well, and I'm just going to use you, Kyle, as the example. I might say, oh, thank you, Kyle. I appreciate your perspective. But, Linda or Karen, we haven't heard from you yet. What might you have to say about this? I'm really interested in hearing your perspective on this. And so a lot of times it's being able to know as the leader that, hey, I'm going to have to pull in some of these other folks sometimes, even though I might create space, right? They still may not feel as comfortable. And you mentioned, Kyle, that psychological safety. They still might not feel as comfortable with the group and feel like they have that full psychological safety they may want to be able to be vulnerable or to put those ideas that are out there. And I think it's important for us to empower those team members to stand up and share their perspective, and almost help them understand that it might be an expectation of being part of this team, that everyone collaborates and everyone shares that perspective. So I think that this is, as Linda alluded to, yeah, this does happen. It is a challenge at times. And a lot of managers are taken back, or leaders are taken back when this does happen and they don't know what to do. And I think, all of these points that we've discussed here today are all ways to be able to help break that ice and to deal with some of those issues that might come up.
Yeah. So good. And I think as you were describing that, it's really elevated awareness around the leader in the room to make that observation and see what is a dynamic. How is this individual, who maybe with good intent, positive intent, is trying to bring positive solution and is just more confident and comfortable than some of the others? Or over time, maybe people in that room have just silenced because somebody else is always speaking, right? And so owning that room and being observant and aware as the leader to facilitate that collaboration, I think becomes really, really critical. And so maybe we summarize that in saying, turn down the noise and turn up the listening and the truth, right? And bring that to the table when it may feel like it's a little bit lopsided. Wow. Awesome, you guys. Well, that's all the time we have here. Oh, go ahead, Karen, real quick.
Oh, just a quick question, Kyle, because I think we could all probably speak to the fact that oftentimes the leader actually reveres this kind of behavior.
Mhm.
And there is like, those of us as coaches can see this and spot that maybe there's some imbalance in the room, but really, how do we help the leader figure out how to recognize those moments to elevate the voice and quiet, right? So I think one of the things that from our perspective here is revering the loudest, most gregarious voice that presents very well, oftentimes it's a destructive hero in some sense of the word. And helping the leader actually understand that is really the key, rather than, and here we are as coaches really in this space and really supporting the leader's growth, right? To recognize those moments of opportunity to support how they help the room and the team be more balanced.
So here's the question that's kind of running through my head. And this is actually coming off of a client of mine recently, but how do you separate someone's influence from the actual impact they have on others? And I'll frame it this way. So this particular client of mine, unbelievably influential in her role, right? A dynamic sales leader, has the personality, the fire, the passion, all of that, and just entrains people in that circle to her. What she doesn't realize is the adverse of that is her influence when her energy drops into kind of that default or that stress reaction or that negative approach, just how powerful that is as well. And so I think there's an awareness sometimes when we're really in our flow, in our zone, and we're attracting all those positive things and it's working so well. And then we react the other way just as strongly, that we don't realize the impact that we have on the adverse side. So kind of with that as a frame, how would you answer that question? Let me maybe say it again. How would you separate someone's influence from their actual impact, right? And help them see it, maybe, is a better way to ask that.
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like those dynamic leaders that we have, charismatic leaders that when they leave the company just kind of falls without them. So to be proactive, to put systems in place when things are going well, that when that person leaves the company, when that person maybe has a downturn, has some setbacks, and they're not bringing the excitement, that there's systems in place that things keep moving. Everybody else still knows what to do and still keeps moving forward.
Yeah.
I hone in specifically on like the leader themselves, right? And thinking about a couple of different things. One is their own self-awareness, which would be related to, just them recognizing the impact of their actions, right? So we have a certain level of confidence that comes from person's expertise versus a certain level of confidence that comes from their personality, and being able to understand how we can maybe divide those and say, okay, there's the influence you have that's because you're an expert, but then there's the influence that you create because of the way that you behave or the way that you respond or what that is. And I think that's also related to an individual's level of emotional intelligence and their ability to be able to, track their own emotions and self-manage and regulate, as well as understanding how that might impact other people that they're working with at the same time. And so I think for leaders that, that do have great deal of influence, like understanding and emotional intelligence and their impact of their actions on other people is really critical and key for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Karen, what would you add?
Yeah, I would say, we're all human, and things that happen on the on the backside of us showing up in our professional arena very much oftentimes influence how we show up personally, how impacts how we show up professionally. And kind of going back to what you were saying before, Kyle, regarding how psychologically safe this environment is, the one thing that I I believe in wholeheartedly is if you take the time it takes less time. And so what that means is, and I'm going to say this, and everybody in the corporate world is going to be like, you can't do that, but slowing down enough, right, to get the critical data that would inform us of what just happened, that we get to now use as a means for tweaking and pivoting. And so if we understand what the trigger was for this person's energy to shift downward, and it were a safe enough place within the team, then we reflect back, what is it, each week, whatever that might be, every day, whatever the need might be, to say what worked and what didn't work, what resources are we leveraging, so that perhaps we get enough data in this to recognize these, again, tweaks and pivots. The tweak and the pivot is what builds this level of, I guess, resiliency and agility through how we're working. We see now our energy has an opportunity to shift back, or maybe it needs to stay here. Maybe there is a reason why this is where we are at this point. But understanding that allows us now to do those modifications in a shorter span of time, rather than continuing to let it go and let it fester, and then we lose the wheels on the bus, and that becomes very costly and pretty traumatic. So, and then we have to bring in change management, right? So I think reflective practice is where I would say really, really critical in this, and we don't do it well enough. We don't understand the value of it well enough. But again, I would say taking the time it takes actually takes less time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that phrase. It's kind of like you got to slow down to speed up, and so much of you use the word emotional agility too, and then tie that into Jeremy's point about emotional intelligence, and just all of you thinking big picture about awareness for the individual, right? And with this particular client, I think that was it. It was like I never even thought about how when I put all my energy into doing things that are really, really good and impact people in a positive way, how putting that same quantity of energy in a negative way, the impact that it could have, because it's that awareness hadn't switched yet. And when I try to, personal awareness is kind of this big thing that everybody wants to talk a little bit about, and we all wish we had more of, and we're on this lifelong journey to try to maybe achieve that or even get close to it. And so when I try to simplify awareness, I think of it in about 4 different ways. And the first one is a complete lack of. And our world consists of a lot of those people. We just blow and go, and we're doing what we can do, and we have no idea what we're leaving in our path, right? I think that second level of awareness is what I call ex post facto, or after the fact. Something happens, and then at some point down the road, it may be 10 minutes, it may be 3 weeks, we go, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or maybe I shouldn't have spoken that way. And then I think in that third level, there's this somewhat present where we're actually engaged with someone, and something's coming out of our mouth, maybe not the way we want to, but we have the awareness to say, I could change this if I want to, if I'm really paying attention to what potential impact this could have. And I think the final place where we all want to be, speaks, Karen, maybe from your perspective energetically, is that place of choice where we actually slow down, pause in a moment, and then consciously and very intentionally choose the attitude or energy that we want to put forward in that situation. And I think when we can all consciously get to that place of choice, we start seeing so much improved from the standpoint of communication, relationships, and so forth.
My favorite word in this is responsibility. And so when we say responsibility, we hold a lot of judgment in that, right? There's a lot of shame and maybe some guilt in responsibility. So I like to flip the word upside down. We have the ability to respond.
Yeah.
So that is exactly what you just said, Kyle, is conscious choice. I have the ability to respond now, instead of having to take responsibility for the way that I showed up. It's very different energetically, right?
Yeah, because you're going to take responsibility one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, Kyle, it's like, and Karen, the other thing that I love that you said was about slowing down. And that is something that a lot of organizations do not want to hear. They don't want to do, right? And a big part of the reason why that, we're always trying to move on to the next thing. We're always trying to make the most money, et cetera. But we have a tendency to sometimes to forget about the people who make all of that happen, and what kinds of development or what kinds of, things they may need to help support them. And by slowing down, we can be able to give some of that feedback. And Kyle, as you were saying, is that, sometimes people don't know the impact, right? They don't know, and we're not giving that feedback, and they've never received the feedback to know how they show up or how they present, right? So that's a real challenge, I think. And a big part of that is because we are moving, at 150 miles per hour. We don't take the time to be able to sit down and have conversations and then talk about the things like Karen was laying out there. And I think that's a big problem for us. And especially when we put so much on a leader's shoulders to really manage, and to kind of oversee and to do what they need to do in the organization, it's something that we don't take as seriously or value as much as we need to.
Yeah, totally agree. And I'm going to drag Linda back into this for a minute, because your work in really, as you say, supercharging these trainers in organizations, right? And helping them understand how their approach can have an impact on how people are learning these skills, whether they're soft skills or their technical skills or whatever, how they're delivering those and how they're showing up as leaders or subject matter experts in their roles becomes so important in the kind of work that you're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So many people, they're subject matter experts, they're managers, and so they get training thrown on top of all that. And they come running to me, Linda, they're making me train. And I feel so much sympathy for these folks because they're not given extra time or anything to do the training properly, to get training skills, none of that. It's just they, barf on some slides, they read the slides, they check the box, the training happened, and they move on with their lives. And it just breaks my little trainer heart when I hear people say, oh yeah, tomorrow at work, I have to go to training. And that's why that's the situation. When there's just easy little things that I can give them, little tips, little tricks. I'm like, here's my little trainer bag of tricks. Let me reach in and give you a few things. It's going to change the whole thing, the whole atmosphere. It's going to be more enjoyable for you. It's going to be more enjoyable for the participants, and the learning transfer will happen. So I love empowering folks with that. But yeah, the attitude there is everything. And that's also why we need to develop other leaders, because when you have that one charismatic person who has that great positive influence, yeah, things go south, things go sideways at the company, they didn't get a promotion they thought they deserved, and now it's that much energy going negative. If we've developed the other leaders, they will step up. And this is very much, I think of like the Spurs, when David Robinson or Tim Duncan would go down with an injury, the rest of the team, they had to still play their games. They still had, and their skills would actually ratchet up when those things would happen, because they had been developed already. They were ready to step in and lead.
I love it. It's called a team for a reason, right? Yeah. I love the word atmosphere, right? So I think I'll wrap us up with that. Is like, how are we creating an atmosphere for others to succeed? And so I would challenge the watchers and listeners, really pay attention to how your influence is having an impact on others, right? So try that on for this week. That's all the time we have for today. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Great episode. Be sure to join us every week at noon Central on LinkedIn for the short version, and anytime here on our YouTube channel at MindFit Coaching. Thanks for joining us. Have a great one. That's a wrap for another edition of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast. We're so grateful for our guests today and the impact they're making with the work they do. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to watch the longer version of this episode, and be sure to like, comment, connect with, and follow me and each of our guests. You'll find all of our links in the caption of this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in every Thursday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for new episodes.